Okay, so before we get into chapter 4 of John, I want to go over some of your questions. Some of your questions were really good um, on the text. So I think it will help to do a little bit of a discussion before we start, because there are some really interesting questions, and I think it will allow us to go deeper into the text. So I'm going to start with Azerat. I wasn't able to read Ramos because it just popped in. So you have two excellent questions, right? First of all, you ask, like, if Jesus knew he was going to die, right? Why did he go? Why didn't he escape, right? He was doing so much good, right? Why did he just allow this to happen? So this is a very good question. Do you remember when I talked about about the two prophets, Elijah and Elisha, and when Elijah died, he gave double portion of his spirit to Elisha, right? It's the same here. Unless Jesus dies, I think this is for me the main reason why he had to die. Unless Jesus dies, we cannot receive his spirit. You see what I mean? We cannot receive his life, right? Like Elijah. So, and this is not a new thing. It also, in the Greek culture, you have this idea. So you can jot down this notion that there was a mystery religion in the at the same time as Jesus was alive. You had this mystery religion, which was the cult of Dionysos. Dionysos, D-I-O, and I have no idea. And I think it's a Y-N-Y-S-I-S, Dionysos. Look it up. So the Dionysos, you're familiar with the god Dionysos? Most of you, right? No, you, okay. He's the god of wine. He's a very famous god in the Greek pantheon, right? So he had there was a ritual, the people who worshipped Dionysos, what they would do, they would kill a bull, which represented the deity, which represented Dionysos, and then they would all eat of the bull. And when they were eating of the bull, the idea was that they were actually absorbing the power of the god, right? So you can see parallels with the Christian communion service, right? When the Christians divide the bread and they say, this is the body of Christ, right? You're familiar probably a little bit, and they eat it. This is perhaps they got the idea from this Greek, right? The idea that we can actually eat the God and receive the God spirit, right? So in that sense, you have both a Hebrew understanding of death as a transmission of the prophet's life, and the Greek notion of eating the God, right? So Jesus is living in that time. So he understands his death to be important and significant, because it is the only way that what is inhabiting him can come out and enter his disciples. And we see the difference, right? Once he dies and the disciples take over, they are completely different people from what we, if you read for that you would have to read the book of Acts, right? This is when the disciples really become empowered and start to teach themselves. And you see them kind of in the Gospels, they're kind of a bunch of morons, right? They never understand anything. They're always, besides the point. When you get to the book of Acts, they're completely different. They're empowered, they're intelligent, they're doing, right? They got it, right? So does that answer your question, that Jesus in a way knew that the life that inhabited him could not be transmitted, right, unless he died, right? Kind of like Dionysos or Elijah, right? I think that's what he was thinking. And by the way, this is interesting in terms of philosophy of death, right? When our loved ones die, very often they become much closer, because now in a way we internalize their spirit, right? We internalize their life. I I had a very poignant dream about my mother dying. My mother's still alive, but I dreamt that she died. Hopefully she won't listen to this recording. Sometimes she listens. I hope she won't listen to this one. But I dreamt that she died, and it was just so painful. It was just like all the light in my universe turned off, right? Because she's such a light, right? And as I was just sitting down like a heap, like I was just heartbroken, I heard a voice, and the voice said, now you must become her. You must internalize her light, and you must shine like her, right? It was a very beautiful dream. So I think for me, this is what the significance of death is, that we can then, or we have the responsibility, right? Or we have the capacity to then carry their souls, carry their light, and transmit it, right? So there's a lot that we can dig, right, in terms of a reflection on death and so forth. So that's a really good question. Now, the second question you asked, Azerat, okay, he said he was going to come back. It's been 2,000 years. Why would he lie? Right? So there is a whole movement right now. And by the way, one of the main proponents of this, what I'm going to talk to you about, is actually a Hindu thinker called Yogananda. There's a whole school of thought that describes the second coming of Jesus as the second coming in our hearts, right? In other words, Jesus comes back through us. So this is one way to understand it. Are you familiar with the singer Leonard Cohen? You are? Okay, you need to. Leonard Cohen, do you remember the song when he says, there's one song where he talks about, I think it's about Ring the Bell or something, and he talks about the resurrection of Jesus in our hearts, right? So it's one of his songs, right, where he talks about, Jesus resurrected. He doesn't believe historically, but he thinks Jesus can come alive again through us, right? So there is a whole school of thought which says that we are the ones actually who bring Jesus back through the internalization of his teachings and then enacting his teachings. So maybe that can help you understand, right? When Jesus came to the Jews, right, to the Hebrews, he was not recognized. They were not expecting him to come like that. And maybe we are now expecting him to come a certain way, but maybe he's going to come back in us, right? There might be, maybe it's not going to be like we expected, on a cloud with trumpets, right? And maybe it's going to be much more humble, much more subtle, much more gradual as he is coming back gradually in our collective consciousness. So that might be one way to respond to your concern, which is very legitimate, right? Okay, great. Let me go to Nasiri. Yes, so Nasiri, you're perplexed about these priests, right, who are supposed to be spiritual leaders, and here they are plotting, right? So the priests at the time, they had almost nothing left of the spiritual, right? They had become an elite power group, right? They were extremely wealthy. They were, what's the word? Cooperating with the Romans in order to ensure that they stayed in power. So this was, the real spiritual leaders at the time were actually the Pharisees, right? Not the priests. So all these Pharisees that Jesus is fighting with, were actually deeply spiritual people. They taught the people, they were concerned with the text. The priests at the time, they were like maybe, I don't know, the Vatican, today's Vatican, where it's a lot of power, a lot of wealth. And really the main preoccupation of the priests was to maintain their power, right? So does that answer a little bit your question, Nasiri? So yeah, they were not the spiritual leaders of the time. The Pharisees were. And then you mentioned, let me see if I can read my writing. Yes. Yes. Jesus is saying, if you keep my commandments, right? You were a little annoyed with that we would abide in his love only if we keep his commandments, right? And you're like, well, why can't we abide in his love even if we disobey, right? Very good. So now remember, there is only one main commandment Jesus gives in that whole passage. Do you know what it is? Love. Exactly. So you dwell in the love of God if you love. We're going to talk about that today, right? If you hate, even if God is all around you, you can't feel it, right? So he has a point when he says, you cannot abide in my love unless you are open to love, right? Unless your heart is open to love. So in that sense, right? And we'll talk about that today. Okay, great. And then there was Bukhari. And then I'll go to the text, right? Bukhari briefly. She's perplexed about the verse. I don't know if you remember it. Whoever loses his life will find it. Whoever finds his life will lose it. Anybody know the meaning of this passage so we can clarify for Bukhari? It's a very famous passage. Anybody know the meaning of that? Yes. Jesus says, whoever loses his life will find it. Whoever seeks his life will lose it. Yeah, you speak. Yeah, I see that. Terrible. Anybody have a clue? Think Tao Te Ching. They're very similar. Lao Tzu would say something like that. Whoever loses his life will find it. Whoever finds his life. That's something that the Chinese philosopher would have said too. What do you think it means? Why is he saying that whoever loses his life will find it? Whoever seeks his life will lose it.
I mean, I'm not entirely sure, but it could have to do with the idea of like grasping, trying to control too much, and then you lose track of your life.
Yeah, so if you're trying so hard to grasp, you'll lose, right? This is Ecclesiastes also, right? So Jesus is very much in line with this tradition, and if you're releasing, you'll get, right? So this is right, one of the Eastern teachings, right? We can say of Jesus. Excellent. So good. All right, let's get into today's text. We're doing chapter 4. Okay, so quick review what we did last time because it's connected. We saw already the two texts are connected. The teachings are parallel. We talked about the connection between water and wind, right? Which we saw alluded to the creation story when you had the spirit above the waters, right? So Jesus in a way is ushering in a second creation. He's ushering in a new beginning for humanity. And it's a new beginning which comes when we receive what he calls the second breath. Right? Remember, the first breath we received at the creation when God took the earth, breathed. Now he's saying you can receive a second breath, which of course is his breath, right? Which is why he had to die. So he has this powerful life within him which he can transmit. Remember, we talked about the master-disciple relationship in the ancient world was not just knowledge, it was transmission of the very substance of the teacher was transmitted to the students. So Jesus is talking about something like that. He's saying you can become me, right? You need to receive not just my teachings, you need to receive my substance, right? Hence the strange ritual in the church that we sometimes don't understand of people eating the body of Christ. Well, this is just the ritualized version of receiving the substance of the teacher, which was not a weird thought at the time. It was perfectly normal. You came and you lived with the teacher. You slept with the teacher. You were there with the teacher to receive the substance, right? So that's the idea. So he's, of course, now to receive the second breath, right? This is the key. We have to position ourselves a certain way. Right? And again, I believe really the teachings here, what Jesus is saying is that his life is accessible to anyone who positions themselves in that way. So you don't have to be a Christian or you don't have to be a Christian or even a Jew. You can be a Muslim, a Buddhist, a Hindu. If you position yourself in the right way, you will receive this life. You will receive this substance, right? It's like it's floating around and it's waiting for a vessel, right? So last time we saw, let's review a little bit. What did we learn about the kind of positioning that was needed in order to receive the second breath? What did Nicodemus learn? Or what was he taught? We don't know if he learned, but what was he taught? Absolutely, has to become a baby, right? We had a beautiful quote by Bokhari, right? Page 25 in the Tao Te Ching, right? Where it's exactly the same idea, right? Become I didn't write it down, but you guys did. So what is the quote?
I think it's he who is in harmony with the Tao is like a child. I think.
Yeah, and then his bones are, add this, his bones are supple, his bones are weak, flexible, right? Like the child, right? So whoever is aligned with the Tao is like a child or a baby. And then the text adds, if I remember, thank you, Bukhari, you're saying it's page 55, sorry, yes, 55 of the Tao Te Ching, talking about the flexibility of the baby, right? So we have to be in a way open, receptive, innocent, curious, full of wonder, available, ready to go wherever we need to go, right? This is the baby who is supple, right? We need to be willing to go anywhere, right? Follow wherever that breath is leading, we follow, right? So this is the first thing we saw. But today we're going to see something very different, a very different approach to receiving this breath. So this one still sounds kind of intellectual, right? Because you have to be open, willing to be led. Well, it says it's existential too, but So that's certainly one way, but then now today we will see something very different. So let's go into chapter 4. We'll talk about a little bit who are the Samaritans, right? Because this is important. So let me get to that. Okay. Good. Okay. Anybody know who are the Samaritans? She's a Samaritan woman. She's not a Jewish woman, right? So anybody know who the Samaritans are? If you don't, that's okay, I'll tell you. Okay. So Samaritans were kind of a mixed breed, right? They were, if you know the history of the Jews, you know that at one point they were all exiled to Babylon, right? They were living in the land of Israel, and then there was a war. They were invaded by the Babylonians, and Babylon, by the way, is present-day Iraq. As we can see, they were invaded by Iraq. It's not far from there. We're still there today, guys. We still have Iran and Iraq, right, posing a threat, right? So this whole region, Iran, Iraq, right, they were at the time called Babylon, and so they invaded, and everybody was exiled to Babylon. There just a few Jews remained, usually the unlearned. They took the elites and brought them, all the leaders, all the wealthy people, they brought them to Babylon to assimilate them, and they left the peasants. These Jews, and then what they did, that was the policy of Babylon, they then brought a bunch of different people there to mix with the remaining Jews. So there would be no identity left, right? The idea was to assimilate the elites in Babylon and to assimilate the peasants in Israel by bringing a bunch of people. They were not just Babylonians. Whoever they conquered, they would just throw there. So these Samaritans, they're the Jews that intermarried or intermingled with the Babylonians, with whoever was there. And so they're kind of half-breeds, right? So when the Hebrews came back after the exile, they were released after 70 years, and they wanted to rebuild Jerusalem, rebuild the temple. And the Samaritans came humbly, right? And they were like, hey, we'd like to help. And the Jews were like, ew, hell no, you guys are mixed, we don't want your help. So they kind of pushed them aside, right? And despised them because they were kind of half-blood, half-breeds. And so ever since that time, there was tension between the Samaritans and the Hebrews, right, and the Jews. And the Samaritans, after that, they were like, oh, really? So you are not going to let us rebuild the temple with you? So we'll build our own temple. And by the way, it's mentioned here. So the temple of the Jews was built on Mount Zion, and this one they built on Mount Gerizim. So they had now their own parallel thing going on, right? They were like, really, you don't want us? Well, watch us. We're going to build our own temple, have our own God, own worship over here. So Jesus alludes to this, right, when he says there will be no more temple, either yours or theirs. We're going to talk about that. Okay, so the Samaritans, there was a lot of tension. Not only that, but there was a lot of hatred. So usually when Jews had to travel from the north of Israel, normally the path would make them cross into Samaria, but the tension was so high and the hatred was so intense, they would actually go all around, and it would take a couple days more journey to get to Jerusalem. And Jesus actually, he was like, whatever, I'm not going around, I'm going through. So he would always cross through, right? And this is one of these moments where Jesus is acting kind of out of character. Instead of going around Samaria in order to reach the north of Israel, he's like, I'm just going to cut through. I don't care that we hate each other, right? So he cuts through, and he arrives, and now we're at the scene, right? It's noon, very hot. Everybody's home, right? Except one person, Jesus, right? And this woman who pops out of her house at noon to get water. So this should tell you something about her already. What type of woman goes at noon, high noon, the hottest time of the day to get water? What does it tell you about her personality, her character, her situation? What do you know already about her when you read that? But she should have gotten, everybody you see would get water early in the morning or late in the afternoon, right? That was a typical time. And women would... No. So definitely she's not like the others, right? So yes, she's not a follower. She has a personality. This is a nice way to put it, because I haven't heard that approach yet, because most people, they'll say something else, but you are able to hone into her temperament, right? She has a strong character. She's not afraid to not be with the pack, right? She's doing her own thing. But noon is very inconvenient. It's very uncomfortable. Why would she choose that time of the day to get water? Why is she consciously avoiding the others?
Yeah, I was going to say she doesn't want to conflict.
Okay, so right, so she's kind of a loner, right? We get the sense she's a loner. She has a strong personality. We see that in the conversation, right? And so, and maybe, she has some issues with the village. We'll see what in a bit.
Maybe they have to line up. I don't like waiting on line. So
Yeah, no, you're right. They do have to line up. So maybe she's like, you know what, I'm going to be smart about this. So she's smart, right? Absolutely. Good. So continuing, right? Where the well, and this is also significant, because usually the wells in the ancient Near East, this is a hookup place. This is where you find a wife or you find a husband. This is the bar, right? In the Bible, actually, there are several marriages that take place. The meeting is at a well, right? You have Moses found his wife at a well. Jacob found his wife at a well. So now we have Jesus and this woman, and there's a kind of sexual tension, right? At least as far as she's concerned, right? Because especially when he goes and says, give me a drink. Give me a drink is a pickup line, right? It's like it's trying to start a conversation, trying to start a relationship. And how does she react to this pickup line? What does she tell Jesus? No, she's like, what? No, why should I? Right? So very resistant, right? She's not interested, and so forth, right? And we find out why later. So before we go into what Jesus tells her, right? Proposes to her. Let's go a little bit into her history, right? What does Jesus reveal about her later in the text? What has she been through, so that we can understand why she's so detached, right? Why she's so harsh with him. What has she been through in her past? What does Jesus reveal about her romantic life?
did she like have like 5 husbands who all died?
Exactly, right? So 5 husbands. Okay, so this is what's interesting, because the church has interpreted, right, that she was probably a sinner. That's why she had 5 husbands, right? So the interpretations have not been very charitable to this woman. We have always interpreted her as a kind of sinner and so forth, but actually it's probably not the case. See, in those ancient times, you would marry, but then you would have a whole year. So you would have what is called the betrothal, which counted as a marriage, and then you had a whole year where you weren't together. The guy was trying to build a house, get his act together. And we should still do this. This is a great idea. And then at the end of that year, they would actually live together. So she could have been betrothed, and then something happened to the guy. Remember, we are living in a lot of tension. There's a lot of death. There's a war in the air with the Romans. There's a lot of assassinations with the Samaritans. So it could well be that she had these 5 husbands and they died, right? Or that they cheated on her and left her, right? But definitely this is a woman, 5 times she tried to love and 5 times she failed, right? This is where we are. So what is her state of mind psychologically, do you think, with regards to love? Exactly, doesn't exist. And is she open to a new relationship, do you think? No. It's after 5 times failing, she's done, right? And we see that she's a loner. She's doing her own thing. She's not with anybody. So we have to understand this before we can understand where the dialogue is going. She is somebody who has walled herself off to love, right? She's done with love. She's been hurt too much. And she represents every single one of us who have suffered so much that we shut down, right? This is what we're about to learn, is what is the path, right, for us, or what is the gift that is available to us, right, in terms of healing, when we have failed so much that we shut down. And this could be in love, it could be in the career, it could be with a child. We have tried and tried and tried and failed and failed and failed, and now we are done, right? And we are walled in and we are finished and the door is closed, right? Show's over, right, as we say, right? So So we are dealing here with a heart which has been shut down, which is unable to love, and which is deeply wounded and deeply broken, right? So now we have to see what the second breath will look like for her, and how can she position herself to receive that. So Jesus asks her for a drink. Now I want you to hone in on this. He's asking for a drink. It's not only that he is thirsty. There is something deeper that he's doing with her, and can anyone tell me what it is? So it's not just a pickup line. It's not just he's thirsty. He's working her. What is the teaching here with regards to her when he says, give me a drink, and then right after he says, if you knew the water that I have for you, you would, how does he put it? You would have asked me for a drink, right? So there's this kind of, he asks for a drink, and then he promises this new water, which is the second breath, right? So living water. So let's try and stop on this. What is happening? What is he teaching? Yes, Linda.
It sounds like he's trying to give a command, whereas he shows that he's like kind of like in charge, like a buffer. That's what it feels like.
So is that his style?
I don't think that has to be. I don't think that has to be a demeaning sense. I think it could be more like, oh, I want her to be my follower. I want her to follow, my teachings. So therefore, she should do the simplest task I ask her. Then she can be appreciated.
Okay, so there's an element. So he's asking, but is it about him or is it for her that he's doing that? I guess that would be my question. Is he doing that so that he can confirm that she can follow him, or is he doing that for her sake, right?
Well, I think it's more. Oh, can I?
Yeah.
I think it's more that he's trying to show that he can build a relationship with the Samaritans, which is like the Jewish people and the Samaritans historically don't have a good relationship. So therefore, he's trying to show that he can love anybody.
Okay, very good. That's point one, right? One way to understand this is, remember, in the context of the political time of that time, right, when between the Jews and the Samaritans, they would not eat with each other. They would not touch each other's stuff because it's impure, right? So,
I was going to say, your interpretation of like why she was, I guess, why she was cold or distant, I didn't interpret it that way. The way I interpreted it was that Jesus was clearly a Jewish person, and he was with Jewish people. So therefore, that relationship was already
yes.
From the start. It was supposed to be distant.
Absolutely.
I feel like that's why.
Yeah, definitely. But I tried to go into her psychological state to see what Jesus is going to do. Right? What is he trying to do? What is his purpose? Right? How is he addressing that? Basically. Okay. Going back to what you said, so everyone can write it down. Right? First thing we learned here. The Jews and the Samaritans did not eat with each other because for the Jews, the Samaritans were impure. And so to touch them was to become impure, right? So now when Jesus is saying, give me a drink, it's a very powerful actual request because he's basically saying, I don't consider you impure. And this is very typical of Jesus, right? He would, there was no pure and impure for him. Everybody was worthwhile, right? He would touch everything. He would touch the dead. He would touch the lepers. He would touch, right, women, which are all considered to be impure. So this is first thing that he's doing by saying, give me a drink. He's breaking down this barrier of pure and impure, and he's connecting. Very good. I like that. What's another way to understand? What's his agenda? What is he after? Nasiri.
I'm not sure, but I think he was testing if she has the position for the second breath, if she has like the willingness, flexibility, a chance for her to be a receiver.
Okay, good. But here, so it's strange. Why does he test that she's a receiver through asking her to be a giver? That would be my question to you.
To see if she's like willing to try, to give to him, because when you're modeling, you give to the person that you're modeling.
Okay, good. You're on the right track. There's something going on, right? He's trying to position her, right? So he can give her not the breath, but the water this time, right? So we had the breath for Nicodemus, or the second birth, right? Here he's trying to give her this living water, this water which is healing and rejuvenating and so forth. But he has to position her. If she's going to be the bitch that she has been, up until now, can't give her anything, right? So he's trying to position her. So I want to look at this. What is so special? What is so profound? What will happen to her when she gives that drink to Jesus? What is the significance of that? I want us to really think about it. She's someone who cannot love. And what is he asking her to do when he's asking her, give me a drink? She's someone whose heart is closed. What is he doing when he asks her, give me a drink? Yes.
Asking her to receive his love.
Almost, because I'm not seeing yet how you're getting there. I'm just seeing what will happen to her when she's able to give the drink? What will happen to her internally? That's the question, right? We're going to where Nasiri is going.
Well, I think, going back to what you said, they would be breaking that like predetermined mold, or like we're not supposed to love each other, even if it's just in a platonic sense or just like
Yeah.
exchange.
So that's for sure. That's the backdrop, right? But there's something more going on. Oh, I see something in the chat. Bokari, speak to us. Bokari, go ahead, talk. Unmute and talk, please. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Maybe like when he's asking her to get her a drink, maybe she's like testing his loyalty and like she's trying to see if she'll have a change of heart, maybe.
Okay, you're on the right track. He's looking for a shift in her. He's trying to shift her by asking her for a drink. What is he gonna enable her to do? What is the shift she has to do to give the drink? What's the thing she has to do? You were kind of all on the right track.
Maybe to like trust again.
Everybody at the same time. Okay, trust. Nasiri? Okay, you're almost there. And you?
To accept his commandments.
Careful. Yeah, okay. Accept this command. You can say that. Yes.
I was going to say,
Yes.
down her barrier that she has.
Yes, right? She can't love, right? She's done. Give me a drink. What will that entail? Okay, here I am, giving you the love that I don't have anymore, right? He is asking her to give something that she doesn't have. I mean, she has water, but he's asking her to give something which she cannot give anymore, which she has become unwilling to give. In other words, in order to find healing, she has to not block herself, but continue to release and to continue to love. Let me stop on that because this is really, really profound. You know how when we've been so hurt, right? And we tell ourselves, I'm never doing that again, right? I'm done. Actually, what we're doing is blocking, right, our capacity to love, right? We're blocking our ability to, sometimes it's blocked automatically, sometimes it's a decision, right? Either, let's imagine a romantic relationship, right, where you were giving your love, and then that person betrays you, right? So now you can't give your love anymore and you're stuck, and this is the pain. Most of the pain we get in the heartbreak is the pain on not being able to give the love. I think more than not having the love. We feel all of a sudden something that was flowing, paf, right, is stuck. Or, so that's unwilling, right? It gets, the energy of love gets stuck. This is unwilling, they've left. Or we choose that. Oh, I'm not going to love anymore. Right? Now the energy is stuck. This is the disease, is the stuckness. What Jesus is doing to that woman, he's unstucking her, right? Saying, come unstuck, flow. If you flow, you will find healing. If you flow, you will receive. The more you flow and continue to flow, do not stop flowing, right? This is how you will again open up yourself to receiving love. If you give, you will receive. That's the lesson. If you want to heal, don't hold back love. The problem with us, when we get hurt, we keep it all inside, right? We get blocked, thinking that this will protect us from pain. When actually, we are creating a diseased state by holding back on our love. This is why the best remedy when you are heartbroken is to find something